Okay. Alhamdulillah والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا ما علمتنا وزدنا علما إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. وصلى الله على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. So, Alhamdulillah, everyone. Welcome to this session. Uh, Ustaz Jalaluddin is with us. Ustaz Jalaluddin is with us, but he is, where is he? Stuck at work? I think he said he was stuck at work. Therefore, he's not able to speak. Um, but he's with us. So what we'll do, inshallah, is I will simply I'll have to host today, inshallah. Um, and the format, just to remind everyone, the format usually is I will simply talk about the section of the book for about half an hour, maybe a bit more, and then we will open the floor for questions and answers. Any suggestions, any comments, any feedback, any questions, then I hand it over to you. So without much further ado, I'm just trying to keep an eye. I hope Ustadh Jalaluddin, if you're there, if you are able to, if you're able to keep track on people trying to enter the room, please let them in. But I am keeping an eye on this as well, inshallah. So I hope everyone is well. We praise Allah for bringing us together again after our introductory session last week or last month, about 4 weeks ago, when I was in Toronto. We did that session, and today, inshallah, we want to pick up on page 7, and we want to get into the actual meat of the book itself. So the very first chapter on page 7, the very first chapter, the Imam calls it "To Every Young Woman Who Believes in Allah," and he says, "I only mean, and I only mean every young woman who believes in Allah." I.e., the young woman who's firmly convinced of his existence and that he is one God with no partners in his essence and attributes. And she is certain that he's the only one who confers benefit, he's the only one who removes harm, and so forth. So this is a really important point, because when we talk about the ahkam, when we talk about the ahkam of Islam in general, we have to you have to be talking to people. You have to talk to people about Iman first, right? One of the biggest issues we have in this quote unquote Dawah sphere, not an issue, maybe like a stumbling block, is, or when we're trying to respond to critiques of Islam, is that the unbelievers, what they will do is they will try to attack the ahkam of Islam. They'll try to attack the rulings of Islam. Well, why do you have this law? Why do you have this law? Why are you commanded to do this? Why do you have to do this? And we try to respond to them, but what happens is we get stuck, because their understanding of reasoning, their understanding of why things are done, why do you do certain things, is all within the realm of the material. It's all within the realm of material reasons, material benefits. So if you say to an unbeliever, "I'm going to walk 10 miles," right? Or "I'm going to walk 5 miles," right? Their immediate response would be to say, "Okay, well, why? You must be going somewhere, right? Are you going to school? Are you going to university? Are you going to work? Are you going to the supermarket? Are you going to the gym? Are you going to the airport?" Like, there's a purpose behind it. And even if you say to them, "No, I'm not going because I need to get somewhere, or I need to get something," they'll say, "Oh, okay, so you're doing it for exercise. That's why, right? You're just going to go for a 5 mile walk because it's good for you. It's good for your health. It's going to help you lose some weight, and blah blah blah, right?" And then you say, "No, it's not that. I'm actually going to go and I'm going to walk 5 miles roughly, or whatever it is, in a circle around the Kaaba, or I'll just walk back and forth between Safa and Marwa." And they're like, "Huh? What's that about?" It's like, "Well, I'm doing that because Allah has commanded me." And that's what they can't grasp, is that it's not always about the wisdoms. It's the fact that or the benefits. Is the fact that we do these things because Allah has commanded us. Why do we do these things? The laws command us because each and every single believer is in his or her own personal, loving, meaningful relationship with Allah. That's what it boils down to. And an unbeliever can't get that because they don't know what it's like. It's like, no, this idea. I remember one of my teachers. He did this time when he's at a supermarket here in the UK. Supermarket. It was Asda, and he was looking for a cake. He wanted to buy a small cake, but he was looking for halal ingredients, pure ingredients. And there was a lady helping him, and not a Muslim. And she offers him one cake. She offers him a cake. She goes, "Oh, what do you think about this one?" And hands him the package, and he looks at it, and he looks at the ingredients, sees something that's dubious or maybe haram, and says, "No, no, no, he wouldn't like that." And the lady's like, "He wouldn't like that? What are you talking about? Your dad?" It's like, "No, my Lord wouldn't like that. I don't, that's why I'm not going to have it. Put it back, right?" And that kind of like it jolts these people when they hear that, like, oh, right. So because again, we are not worshiping a constitution. We are not worshiping a legal code. We are not worshiping uh, statutes or anything like that. No, we're worshiping Allah. So when people don't have that relationship with Allah, it's very, very hard for them to understand these things, right? So again, classic case in point, or I think the most classic case in point is Ramadan, right? Like when again, I see this over and over again. When people are fasting, when Ramadan comes along, and you have your colleagues at work or colleagues at school who are not Muslim, and then they ask, "Oh, why are you fasting?" Um, and they ask, "Why are you fasting Ramadan?" Right? And then people say, "Oh, it's because we want to know how poor people feel, or we want to know how hungry people feel, or we want to identify with people who are suffering, or it's good for your health, it's good for your overall fitness, and blah blah blah." And then the question is like, okay, well, does that mean that if you are poor, you don't have to fast? Or if you're already in good shape, you don't have to fast? Or if your weight is already, if you already have an optimal BMI, you don't have to fast? Is that what that means? Like, well, no, okay. So like, why do you fast? Well, because Allah commanded you, you see. So this is a really important point. So when we're talking about, again, women covering, again, it comes down to her relationship with Allah. You can talk about the wisdoms. You can derive from wisdoms. Okay, so if a woman is dressed like this, uh, people, men who have bad intentions will be more apprehensive about approaching her, and so on and so forth. Uh, what are you saying, Hamad? Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's true. That's true, Hamad. That's true. I've had that experience as well. I've had that experience as well where I've been to a store, and they've given me too much change back. They've given me too much change back, right? And I could have easily gotten away with it, right? It was only maybe a few pounds or less, right? I could have easily gotten away with it. And then I come back and give it back. And the store employee, whoever he or she is, that doesn't affect them because it's not like that's going to be deducted from their salary or anything. They're like, "Why'd you come back? You just walked away." So yeah, but it's not mine. Yeah, but no one knows. No, Allah knows, right? Because they're thinking like it doesn't affect me. The company's not going to notice if a few dollars are missing or 50 cents are missing. They're not going to notice. I was like, no, it's wrong. It's wrong. It's not mine. It's absolutely not mine. You see. So, and again, there are times as well where you can get you might put something in your shopping trolley, accidentally leave the shop, and you get away with it, right? Like the alarm doesn't go off, you get away with it. Yeah, but still, that's still theft, right? So these are important things to get back to show people that it's not about the immediate benefit. It's not about this derived wisdom. It's all about your relationship with Allah. Yeah, it's like I don't care if no one else minds. I don't care if no one else has noticed. Allah knows, and Allah will ask me about this, and that's why I'm not going to take that change. I'm not going to take that item, and so forth. So this is why it's very, very important to start with this point. Why the Imam is doing this, and again, is like what we mentioned in the section one, that story I gave you of Imam Siraj al-Hajj, where he came to the UK and he gave a lecture, and then some women approached him, and they weren't covered, and they said, "Show us in the Quran, the ayat where it says that women have to cover." And then, but before giving them the ayat, he's like, "Okay, I can do this. I can just give them Surah Al-Ahzab I 59. I can give them Surah An-Nur I 31 and 32 and so forth." And then he's thinking, then he says, and then Allah stopped me, and I just said, "Hold on a second. Do all of you pray? Like, I regularly, consistently, 5 times a day. Do you all?" I was like, "Well, off and on, maybe." And he's like, "Okay, well, the command to pray is all over the Quran, right? There's several ayat in the Quran about prayer, but you don't do that. So why should I show you the ayat about hijab? Why? It doesn't make any sense, right?" So he said, instead, what I did when Imam Siraj al-Hajj, what he says after that, I sat down with him and we just talked about Allah. We just talked about Iman, because once that's in place, everything else makes sense. Everything else fits in. And again, you read the Sirah, you read the story of the revelation of the Quran. You read all these things, and that's what you'll find. You'll find that the Messenger of Allah, what Allah commands him to do is to instill faith. Right? The first, like the whole Meccan period, is about instilling faith, making sure people believe in Allah, that they love Allah, that they have a committed relationship with Allah. All that gets put into place, like, and gets implanted firmly, because it's a long time, right? 12 years, and then Allah introduces the ahkam, and because this is what's so important. So he says, that's why he says, "I do not mean the young woman who has heard of Allah but understands nothing about him." So he says in the next paragraph, or has inherited the word iman as a slogan, right? So the word like faith is a slogan, but is not convinced of its contents as a creed that she bears in her soul, right? So again, and he's not talking about a woman who, she might say, "Oh, I'm a Muslim. Oh, my parents taught me Islam as a kid, but I don't know anything else," right? It says, again, there's no point talking to such a person about the rulings. This is a person who needs to learn about Allah first. This person needs to build her relationship with Allah first, and then she can talk about, and then she can be spoken to about the ahkam, about the rulings. And that's why it says, if she's reminded of him, or she thinks about him, she does not know anything about him, other than he, as they say, is this great hidden reality, right? They might have these really like simplistic statements about who Allah is, right? But they don't have a relationship with him. That's the problem, right? And this he said, this faith is kind of like it's figurative, it's metaphorical. It doesn't produce, as he says here, it does not produce any fearful awe in the heart, right? Like, so some people, and this is sad, and it's not just women, it's men. There's like lots of men and women who that they, you might say, their Islam is kind of nominal. Their Islam is kind of like, yes, I'm a Muslim, but I don't know anything. I don't make dua to Allah. I don't think about Allah. I don't consider Allah in my transactions, right? Allah is just this abstract entity out there somewhere, right? Again, talking to someone like this about the ahkam of Allah, what they have to do, and this is halal, this is haram, and this is wajib, and so forth, not going to get very far, because these people, again, they have to build their relationship with Allah first. So that's why, I guess, he says on page 8, I'm only directing my discussion at every young woman who believes in Allah willfully and freely, and this is very important, he says, with faith that emanates from contentment in her heart and the cognizance of her soul, right? So she has this deep-seated faith that's actually it's deeply embedded in her heart and in her soul. And I'm certain that our community is abundantly overflowing with women who savor this faith, right? So he's being very optimistic. He says, I'm certain that our community, our ummah, is overflowing. There's an abundance of women who are like this, who have this faith in their soul, who have this faith deeply embedded in their hearts, and all they really need is some knowledge. That's all they need. They just need some knowledge. They just need some guidance and instruction. But everything else is there. The devotion to Allah, the love of Allah, the adoration of Allah, it's all there. All they need is just some instruction. That's it. They just need some tips. So he also says, he says, do not let any of the temptations. He says, our existence is of the most serious. Do not let the great number of temptations and things out there make you forget the loneliness of it all, right? Do not forget this world, mankind is being tested and is then going back to Allah. So, okay, this is a very, very good analogy that the Imam made in his book. He has a book called al-Insaniya, right? Or it says it's the Minhaj al-Insaniya fi al-Quran al-Kareem, right? The approach to human civilization in the Quran. And he says, how do we balance this life? How do we understand this life properly when we think, okay, the dunya is meant to be this very low thing in the sight of Allah. It's very low, and Allah keeps telling us not to invest in it so much, not to have high hopes about it, not to have long-term plans, not to dedicate too much time and energy and effort into it. But at the same time, the dunya is our seedbed of the hereafter. So the analogy he gave, Imam al-Buti, is he said this dunya is like an exam. It's like a very important exam. If you think about it, like your final exam at university or your final exam at high school, right? Like, I don't know, for the Americans, you might think of things like SATs, or the British, you might think of things like your A levels or something, right? And the idea is, okay, this exam I'm going to do, right? Especially if it's the exam in the subject that you want to go on and study. This exam that you're going to do, it's very short, right? It might be a 2-hour exam, a 3-hour exam, right? It's very, very short. But the consequences are profound, right? Because depending on how you do on that exam, that's going to affect whether or not you go to university, or sorry, what university you go to, and then that's going to affect, like, what kind of jobs prospects you get in the future. That's going to affect what kind of spouse you might be exposed to, potential spouse you might be exposed, and so on and so on and so forth, right? But the exam itself is just a small little thing. The exam itself is just this 2-hour, 3-hour thing, right? So what Imam al-Buti is saying is that's how you view the dunya, right? When you're in an exam room, you just want to focus on getting the task done. You have an exam paper in front of you. You want to make sure that you answer the questions properly, that you're focused, that you dotted all your I's, you crossed all your T's, you spelled your name correctly, and obviously you prepared beforehand, and you hand the paper in, and it's over. You don't want to be sat in the exam room and you get distracted by things. You start staring out the window, looking at birds in the trees, and all these kinds of things, or getting distracted by the guy in the exam room who's tapping his pen, because there's always that guy who does that, who's tapping his pen or tapping his shoe, right? You don't want to get distracted by those things. You want to stay focused, and that's how we want to be in the dunya. We want to be focused. We don't want to let ourselves get distracted, because we realize we only have this minimal time, right? And like in the exam, you can tell that an exam would happen. So usually, if you've ever been in an exam all the way to the end, and when the teacher or the invigilator, or proctor, as we say in America, when he makes that announcement, he says, "Oh, there's only half an hour left. There's only 20 minutes left. There's only 50 minutes left." Right? You want to be the person who's patient. It's like, okay, I know, I prepared. But then there's the guy who's been spending too much time, maybe got distracted by one question. That also happens, right? There's the guy who got really distracted by one question, and now he doesn't have enough time to do the other questions, right? So now he's really stressing, because it's like, oh man, I've got to answer like 15 questions, I only have 10 minutes, right? He's panicking. Or you get the guy who the guy who, like, misread the instructions, right? That happens a lot. There's people who misread the instructions, right? They think that they look at sometimes you get these exam questions where they say, okay, here are 10 questions, or 10 like essay questions. You only have to answer 3, or there's 8. You have to answer 2, and he didn't read that properly, so he's trying to answer all 10. And you go, oh no, right? So you see, that's not paying attention. You're not actually aware of what you're supposed to do, right? Which is the case for all the unbelievers. So this life, despite its loneliness, it is of critical importance, because this life, what happens in this life, what you do in this life, is going to affect how Allah judges you in the next, and that's going to affect everything else. So he says here that for man, this is what he goes on to say. So it says for man. So It says traversing this test is something that men and women have in common, right? So both men and women, we have to traverse this test, right? We both have to. We're equal in this. We have to go through this test. We have to sit in this exam, and we have to pass it, and we have to stay focused. But the woman is distinguished from this in that she carries another vastly important burden in this life, and it is of immense consequence in the next. In addition to simply traversing this journey, as the man does, she also has a very, she's also her herself is an important component of the test. And that's why he says, this is why he says that he quotes the ayah in Surah Al-Imran, the 3rd chapter, verse 14, where Allah says, زين للناس حب الشهوات من النساء والبنين والقناطر والمقنطرة من الذهب والفضة. Now, the important thing is the beginning. He says, to mankind, the love of worldly appetites is painted in glowing colors, women and children, right? So again, women are something that Allah has made attractive for men. I remember Sheikh Yusuf Gabr said it's the other way around as well. Men can be made attractive for women. What's more so the case with women being made attractive for men. And he says, well, the woman, as Allah has confirmed, is the first of these passions and desires, right? So there are numerous things that people want in this life, that especially man, like the male, he may be drawn towards entertainment, he's drawn towards money, he's drawn towards fame. But the first thing on the list is women. The first thing on the list is women. And the question is, well, why? Well, why? Now, here is, and this is why he says on page 10, he says the woman is the greatest test in this life for a man. The woman is the greatest test for life in this man. And that's why Allah's mentioned it first. Now, what does this mean? What does this all mean? What he says is, when we think about all the various sins out there, right? All the various sins out there, okay? So riba, drinking wine, drugs, various types of dhulm, various types of crimes. It says none of these things have like a natural inclination in them, right? It's not in your fitrah to desire these things. It's not in a man's natural disposition or natural inclination to love these things, right? Like why would a man have an inclination towards beer when he can have water? Why would he have an inclination towards drugs when he can have an inclination when he has wholesome foods and other things to keep him busy? The thing of the Imam Ramadan, this is discussed as well in his book, or I might say more detail in his book, al-Hubb fil Quran. What he says is this. He says that the things that human beings need to survive, right? The things that human beings need to survive, individually and as a species, are things that Allah puts natural desire in for them, right? So we have a natural desire for food. We have a natural desire for to drink like not alcohol, obviously, but like for liquids, right? We get hungry. Allah puts it, we get hungry and therefore we eat. We get thirsty and therefore we drink, right? Allah puts this emotional need in us. Because again, human beings, this is something I've mentioned many, many times before. You have to remember, human beings, by and large, with maybe rare exceptions, human beings are emotional creatures. It is emotion that moves them. That's why that he used that analogy. He says that your intellect is like the headlights on your car. Your intellect is like the headlights on your car. It can show you the way. Absolutely. Headlights, they can show you the way, but they're never going to move your car. What moves your car, obviously, is the engine or the petrol/gas, right? As you might say in America, right? The gas. Okay. So he says the petrol or the engine, that metaphor, that's your emotions. People are moved by they're moved by love. They're moved by hate, by fear, by disgust, by pain. That's what pushes people. If people were left to rationally work things out, they wouldn't do a lot of things, right? If you said to someone, you need to eat 2,000 calories a day in order to stay alive, right? You need to eat 1,000 calories a day to say, like you say that to a child, you need 1,000 calories a day. A human being can understand that rationally. Say, yeah, okay, I need 2,000 calories a day. But if a human being doesn't actually feel hungry, he wouldn't do it. A lot of people just would not do that. They get lazy, they get distracted, they think, oh, whatever, right? But it's the feeling of hunger that says, okay, now I need to eat something. It's that unbearable feeling of being hungry that makes people eat. It's that unbearable feeling of thirst that makes people drink water. And again, you can see this. I think as I'm taking as an example to argue this point. If you read these stories about gamers, people like really into video games and really into like strategy games, especially places like Korea and Japan. I've read stories about this. I've actually read these stories while teaching English because they come with English textbooks. This guy who will get so engrossed. There was a guy I think it was in South Korea. He got so engrossed in a video game, right? And he was playing at one of these he's playing at one of these cafes, right? And what he was known to do was, he might have some food or some snacks next to him, but he would play and then he would just doze at his desk, right? Fall asleep at his desk, wake up, then keep playing and keep playing and playing, and then doze off some hours later, wake up again. And he did that for like a 2-week period. A series like a 2-week period. I guess some time off work or whatever it was. Got really obsessed with the game. And eventually what happened was he dozed off and never woke up again. He dozed off and never woke up. He died. And then because the people who were working there noticed, like, hey, he hasn't actually moved for the last 7 hours. Like, oh wow, he's dead. Yeah, because he simply forgot to eat. Right? He got so into the game, he actually forgot to eat. He ignored his need to eat. He ignored his need for hydration, and he died. So that is why Allah puts these things naturally in us. We naturally feel hungry. It's not something we have to rationalize. It's not something we have to remind ourselves. We don't have to put reminders on our phones and say, "Ooh, it's 3 o'clock. I need to eat." No. Now, similarly is the continuation of the species, reproduction. So Allah has put this desire in both men and women to get married and to have children, because that continues the species. Allah has not left it to be a simple rational matter, because if it was a rational matter, the species would not continue. People have to say, yes, I must get married one day for the sake of continuing the species. Let me go find a suitable mate for this. People don't. That wouldn't work. That simply would not work. If marriage was a purely rational thing, Allah had not put any desire in it for us, right? So this is why this is the point that Imam al-Buti is making on page 10 and 11, is that out of all these sins out there, right? It says, and this is why it's dangerous, because okay, with food and drink, the danger with food and drink, right? Because we have that natural desire for food and drink to keep us alive. The danger is excess. The danger is that can lead to maybe eating too much, right? And then that leads to obesity and health problems and whatnot. Likewise here, Allah has put this desire in us so that we continue the species. But it has to be controlled. It therefore has to be controlled, because if it's not controlled, it then leads to fornication and adultery and so on and so forth, and all other kinds of sins and crimes. So he says, out of all these sins, there's only one exception, and it is the sexual impulse that is found in both the man and the woman. This impulse, even though it pushes people towards something unlawful, it is one of the worst sins in the revealed law if it is not controlled by specific boundaries and limits. Right? It has to be controlled by boundaries and limits. It is considered one of the most important necessities and requirements of man's nature. So even though it's a sin, and zina is a huge sin, at the same time, this impulse, this desire, has to be there in order for the species to survive. There's no way for a human being, as long as he is sound and bearing no abnormality, to detach himself if you there's no way to detach yourself or rise above it. So he says, by way of this comparison, you, and he's addressing the young female, he says, you are able to grasp, right? He's addressing the young female here. He says, you are able to grasp that sexual desire is a human's gravest religious test in this life. Just as a man's natural disposition helps him obey a law regarding rulings, regarding all other acts of disobedience or wrongdoing, right? So your natural desire helps you stay away. Your natural inclinations help you stay away from things like alcohol and pork, right? Like once you understand, like for example, I mean, I think as a human being, it's like you just have to look at a pig in its natural environment and you'd be put off. You just look at a pig roll around the mud. You're like, no, I'm not having that, right? That's sufficient. Beer, alcohol, these things, they don't have like a natural appeal. But of course, right, the opposite gender does. So he says, just as man's natural disposition helps in obey law regarding rulings, uh, regarding all other acts of disobedience, wrongdoing, when it comes to sexual desire, it stimulates it, or in the best of circumstances, it is incapable of reining it in or mitigating any of its excitements. So accordingly, the Islamic treatment for all other acts of disobedience lies in moving further away from them and rising above them. As for the matter of sexual intercourse in particular, the treatment is to satiate one's desire and satisfy one's impulse, but within specific degree bounds and not transgress them. Right? So again, when Allah talks about this one going in, where's my mouse going? Yeah. So he's saying that when Allah talks about all the types of sins, like you go to Surah Al-Ma'idah, you go to Surah Al-Ma'idah, ayah 90, where Allah talks about like gambling, khamr and maisir. Allah says, "Fashtanibu," just stay away from it. Just stay away from it. Stay away from pork. Stay away from these things. Stay away from. But Allah says to us, stay away from zina, right? Allah doesn't say stay away from zina, but Allah doesn't say stay away from women, or tells women to stay away from men, right? It's very different, right? So with all these other sins, the command is to stay away from them. All these other things and these other acts, you stay away from them. But with this desire, with this desire for intimacy, this desire for romance, Allah says no. You have to you do it, but you have to do it in a way that's lawful. You have to do it in a way that's halal. You have to do it. You have to find a legal, lawful outlet for it. And this is what we mean. This is why it says, and this is what we mean when we say that the woman is absolutely the gravest component of the man's worldly test. This is what it boils down to. Now, I'll say one more thing before for Q&A. It's on page 11 now, so we've come some way. Is what we want to get at is that the question might come up here is, okay, if Allah has put that in us, this natural desire for the things that allow us to survive, right? So we have this natural desire for food, this natural desire for drink, this natural desire to get married, and so forth. Why didn't Allah do it with things like ibadah? Why didn't Allah do it with worship? Why didn't Allah do it with the salah and reading the Quran and doing dhikr and other acts of worship? And the point there, the wisdom behind that, is that Allah wants us to come to Him voluntarily. Allah wants us to willingly and voluntarily enter a relationship with Him and worship Him purely out of our own desire. Allah wants to build that relationship, not feel that not feel that we're compelled to, right? So if we are late with our prayers, for example, right? If we are late with our prayers, we're not going to feel like some physical discomfort because we haven't prayed, right? You might feel something in your soul. That's true, but that differs from person to person, right? You can feel this pain in your soul because you haven't prayed for a while, you haven't read Quran for a while, whatever it is. But these basic fundamental human needs, no, they're pretty much forced upon us, right? We don't have a way to get around them. And this makes sure, this all done with wisdom, is to make sure that we survive as a species. We make sure that we eat, that we drink. Sleep is another one, right? Allah forces us to sleep. Sleep, that's another one, right? We feel tired, we give up, we sleep, because why? We need sleep to continue, and so forth. Well, alhamdulillah, so I've taken up half an hour or so. So what I will do now is I will open the floor for any comments or questions or whatever feedback you have. Ustaz Jalaluddin usually kicks these off by asking me a question to encourage everyone else, but he's busy right now. He's with us in the session, but he's busy right now. So please, if anyone else has a question, again, you can open your mics, I think, or you can type in the chat box. It's up to you. If you have any questions, barakallahu feekum. Wow, is that it? So please feel free to, if you want to open your mic, or if you want to type in type anything in the box, in the chat box, any questions about what was covered
Assalamualaikum.
today. Oh, sorry,
Assalamualaikum.
yeah.
I had a question. So when Imam Sheikh Buti wrote this, who or we were speaking, who was his audience, or who is he speak? Like, is it women, or is it society in general, or like,
Well,
is this?
his audience, as you can get, his audience is the young woman, right? That's why it's called "To Every Young Woman Believes in Allah." His audience is the young woman. Obviously, uh, anyone else can is welcome to read it, right? Anyone else is welcome to read it and benefit from it. But he's particularly talking to the young one believes in Allah. And that's why. I'll just close my window. It's kind of like, sorry, very very windy day here where I am in Bradford. That's why on page 10, he says, by way of comparison, you are able to grasp, and then I have to put in the footnote, he's addressing you. So when he uses, like, he'll say like enti a lot, enti, right? So he's addressing the young woman who believes in Allah. That's what he's talking to. Yeah. But anyone can benefit, obviously, and I think, like I said in my first session, I think this book is something also that Muslim brothers can benefit from, because it's dealing with the issue. He's dealing with the issue in a very like sympathetic and compassionate way, as opposed to like a lot so much material out there about the hijab, for example. It's just like women are just being berated, women are just being told off, right? Right, like shame on you, or and that's not the right approach to have, right? So whereas the approach in here is an approach that is very again, like very gentle, very compassionate, and gets to the core of the matter. The core of the matter is that it's for the individual believer to develop his or her own relationship with Allah, and then the obedience comes in. It's like you can't uh, you know get mad at your kid. Like if you have a kid who's 10 years old, he doesn't pray, you just like hit him, like, oh, why aren't you praying? Well, because you haven't taught him about Allah. Maybe you haven't taught him about like why we pray, right? You haven't worked on that child's relationship with Allah. That's the key thing is once a person has his or her own relationship with Allah, everything else can then be built on top of it. Or like when we talk about when I've caught the marriage book, Hukuk Zawjain, right, husband and wife, I've said to people that the most important relationship you're ever going to have is with Allah, right? That's what it comes down to. It has to be a relationship with Allah, and then after that, everything else falls into place. Because people say, oh, what if my wife doesn't give me my rights? What if my husband doesn't give me my rights? Okay, well, that's because the person you're talking about has not perfected or worked on his relationship with Allah. That's why, right? When a person has a relationship with Allah and says, ultimately, I do not want to displease Allah, then of course I'm going to give my husband his rights. I'm going to give my wife her rights, right? That's what it boils down to. Any other questions?
I can do a follow up. This question in terms of, I guess, the way he's addressing young women would be different to how he would address young men, right? So he's kind of he's acknowledging that uh, women uh, have to be approached, or um, have to be, this stuff has to be explained to women in a different way versus you would do to a young man. Is that correct?
Yeah, you could say that. You could say that, but it's not like but again, it's not like the book is uh it's not like this book is like classified material that men don't have access to, obviously, right? But yes, he is, yes, he is addressing women, and that's why again, like he explains in the first few pages, he says, this is who I'm talking to. And he says, I'm not, and he's not even talking to like every woman. He said, I'm not, or even every Muslim woman. He says, I'm addressing the woman who has a meaningful relationship with Allah. That's what I'm talking to, right? So thank you, Roshan. That's the point, right? That's what I'm talking to. The woman who knows who Allah is, who loves Allah, the faith in Allah is deeply embedded in her heart and in her soul, because she's the one who will understand everything else. She's the one uh, who will understand all the ahkam that I'm about to talk about. Because you can talk about ahkam, you talk about all the rulings of covering and so forth. That's the woman who would understand, right? The woman who doesn't really know who Allah is, or doesn't really have a relationship with Him, or is kind of like nominal in her Islam, it's not going to really register. You see, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Jazakallah khair.
Right, Barakallahu feekum. Anyone else?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Oh, so we got to Najia.
Um,
Yeah,
yes, this is me.
yeah, Barakallahu. Yes, go ahead.
I had a couple questions.
Okay.
The first one is that um, living in the West, you hear a lot that hijab is a choice. And I just wanted to ask, I guess how you would approach that, because the way I think about it is that it's not 100% true, but there is a part of it that is like, yes, it is a choice in the sense that you are choosing whether or not to obey a command from Allah. But if you are a believing Muslim woman, then you would want to
Yeah.
cover because it's a command.
Yeah.
And then so then there's that portion of it, but the people who often say this, I'm thinking it's more about a crisis in Iman rather than whether to cover or not to cover.
Okay. Alhamdulillah, sounds with an excellent question. Excellent question. Okay. Now, so I think first of all, this idea of the hijab being a choice. Okay. I think this kind of slogan, if you will, is a response to. It's a response to this. You can almost call it a meme. It's like this idea that the unbelievers portray this, that women are forced. They're forced, and what they mean by that is this idea that Muslim women are like held at gunpoint by their dads and their husbands to wear the hijab, right? That's the idea they put out there, right? That women are absolutely forced. Is there a book written to men, to every young man? Maybe. I'd have to look into that, right? But the idea again is that it's not that men tempt women the way women tempt men. That's the idea. So that's what it comes down to. So we're talking about choice. Is that we try to stress that's a choice. What we mean by that is that a woman chooses to wear it because she chooses to obey Allah, right? We don't want to create this mean like, yes, maybe yes. I'm sure there are going to be families where yes, maybe the husband or the husband or the father is going to force his daughter or his wife to wear it. And again, he might be doing it by like fear. It's like, hey, you better not, right? Whereas, again, when a woman has her own meaningful, personal, loving relationship with Allah, she will just voluntarily do it. She will just voluntarily do it. She will just voluntarily, right? Like so. Yes, it's an obligation. Yes, it's an obligation. We're not debating that, but she's doing it. She's going to do it voluntarily, right? Wait, someone. Oh, did she get in? Okay. I was going to say, yeah. So the point is, even though it's an obligation, even though it's an obligation of Allah, because she has a relationship with Allah, she will do it voluntarily, right? This is why the great awliya of Allah, people like Hassan al-Basri and others, some great awliya of Allah, when they talk about their prayers, they say things like they say, I pray my fard prayers as if they're nawafil, right? That's what they say. I pray my fard prayers as if they're nawafil, right? Because they feel voluntary, because I just want to do them. I want to pray Dhuhr. I want to pray Asr. I want to pray Maghrib. They feel like they nefil. It's not like oh, I have to pray. Oh no, the sunset. I have to pray, right? So again, back to that point. So when the relationship is with Allah, everything else falls into place, and you see, and a person sees this voluntary, right? And someone shared with me a dear brother of Imam al-Buti. That's called Minhaj. It's called The Approach to Human Civilization of the Quran. That's what's called The Approach to Human Civilization of the Quran. Let's type it for you. So to keep answering your question, Najia, I saw a friend of mine from Ingushetia, mashallah, brother Iskandar. He shared an interesting video. I think it's actually a Christian man speaking. But he said, okay, how he said, okay, think of it this way, like think of a man, right? So a man as a father and as a husband, right? And he wants his wife to obey him and respect him, and he wants his daughter to obey him and respect him. So he wants his wife to submit to his will and his kids to submit to his will. How does he achieve that? He submits to Allah's will. That's it. If the man, if he submits to Allah's will, and he has principle, and he's principled, and he's consistent, and he's not hypocritical, and he says what he says what he means, and he means what he says, and he doesn't there's nothing hypocritical about him. His wife will just automatically respect that. His wife will automatically respect that, and she will voluntarily submit to his will. So like I want to be with this man. I will listen to this man because I see consistency in him. I will submit to him because he has submitted to Allah. Right? It's very straightforward. And then the kids, when they watch it, they see, oh wow, you know, mom takes dad's lead. Why? Because dad has submitted to Allah. And then they just fall into line. And it's just very, very natural. There's no need to tell anyone off. There's no need to set any rule. You don't need to say anything. It's just natural. It's a natural divine chain of command. It just falls into place, right? And again, it all starts with that loving relationship with Allah, right? So when you have that loving relationship with Allah, you don't think in terms of do's and don'ts and am I allowed to do this and you see that in the way people speak. Islam says this, Islam says that, Islam says don't do this, Islam. It's like, are you in a relationship with Allah, or are you in a relationship with like a legal system or an ideology, right? Islam says, right? There's even books like that. Islam says. What does Islam say? Like who is this, right? Are you talking about Yusuf Islam? Are you talking about some guy from Bangladesh called Islam? I know a brother in New Jersey called Islam. Who are you talking about? What do you mean Islam says? No, Allah says. It's a relationship with Allah. So that point has to be made. And yes, when we make it clear to people, so the way we want to say is that yes, women, the women who do it as a choice, they're doing it because they choose to, because they want to, because they have a relationship with Allah, as opposed to a woman who's like forced, like, or she's pressured by people in her family. Might not even be her mom or her dad. Might not even be her dad or brothers or her husband. It could be her mom. Her mom might force her. Her auntie might force her, right? But because it's coming from them and not from her, she might put it on as she leaves the house, but then she'll take it off when she gets to school, and so on and so forth. Does that answer both your questions, Najia? Or please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, it does. And then another question I had was about, I guess, understanding our personal relationships with Allah. Would our feelings towards like fulfilling the obligations be a good indicator of our relationship, or how do we understand
Yeah,
we might be?
yeah. Okay, so the thing is, the first starting point of this is that if you're asking yourself that question, you're saying, okay, how is it that I can draw nearer to Allah? What are the signs that I'm drawing nearer to Allah? What are the signs? The fact that you're asking that question is a sign of Allah's love for you, because Allah put that in you, right? Allah's put that question in you, right? And that's like a wonderful starting point. That because again, I like quote this hadith before. It's in Ibn Majah's collection. It's quoted in al-Wafi in the commentary on the 25th hadith about how the Messenger of Allah said, the meaning was, he says, Allah gives sadaqah every day. Allah gives sadaqah every day to his slaves, right? There's always, Allah is always doing favors for people, showering his blessings upon people. But then he said, there's nothing like, and all these blessings that Allah gives us, there's nothing like Allah inspiring his slave to remember him. That's the greatest blessing, right? So you think about it, it's like, wait a second. So when Allah says, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ, Allah says, remember me and I'll remember you. وَاشْكُرُوا لِي لَا تَكْفُرُونَ. That's Surah Al-Baqarah 151. Right? Remember me and I'll remember you. Be grateful to me, don't be ungrateful. You can't remember Allah first unless Allah remembered you. It doesn't. The relationship doesn't start with you. It starts with Allah, right? So if you're remembering Allah, that's because Allah is remembering you, right? If you are thinking about how to draw nearer to Allah, it's because Allah is thinking about how you can draw nearer to Him. And then you want to build on that, right? There's like whether that's through inspiring you, whether that's through testing you, right? I was reading a poem recently in the book Qanun Ta'wil by Al-Qadi Abu Bakr al-Arabi. The meaning is like addressing, the poet is addressing Allah and saying, "Oh Allah, every time something bad happens to me, I rejoice because I know you were thinking of me, right? Because I know that you sent me a tribulation in order to bring me closer to you." So we have to be, I would say, on the lookout for the signs of Allah, on the lookout, just like constantly for the signs of Allah's love. And you see that in the tawfiq. So the idea is, when Allah gives you the tawfiq, like you're talking just about, I mean, just this desire is a sign of Allah's love. Just the desire, like how to get closer to Allah, that's a sign of Allah's love. But then you see it like in practical terms. You say, okay, I was able to pray Fajr today in the masjid, or I was able to pray Fajr on time. I did all my prayers on time. I was able to read Surah Yasin this morning. I was able to read the Khairat this morning. I was able to do a Juz al-Quran. I read a Wird of Imam Nawawi. Or so I did all these things I got all these things done, right? These are all signs. And then you think, wow, I've done so much for Allah. No, Allah's done so much for you. Allah's done so much for you. Because all these things are signs of Allah's love. And when Allah gives the tawfiq to do these things. And then again, on top of that, when it feels that you're doing these things kind of like voluntarily, it doesn't feel like a burden. Again, that like to answer your original question, yes, that too is a sign of Allah's favor. That you don't see these things as burdensome. You don't see these things as difficult. You think like, oh man, I have to get. Oh, it's Friday. I have to read all of Surah Al-Kahf, right? Whereas if it's a case of, ooh, it's Friday, Surah Al-Kahf, right? That's different, obviously, right? You're looking forward to it, exciting, and one of the things I think, just to add to your question, one of the beautiful things about that is we want to make sure that these are all good things to do. The recitation of the Quran and Dalal al-Khairat and Awrad and Athkar, these are all great things, but we want to make sure that we stay focused on Allah and not those things themselves, right? This is one of the things I think, like Imam Sha'arawi, he made this point. He said you want to stay focused on the ma'bud and not get derailed by the ibadah, because sometimes the ibadah can take you away, right? The worship can take you away from the one you worship, right? Or can distract in a weird way. Where he said, for example, like again, we're addressing, all right. The topic is women, isn't it? He said, think about Ramadan, right? Ramadan, yes, women get upset in Ramadan. They do when their cycle comes and they can no longer fast, they can't pray, they can't go to Tarawih, right? They go, oh man, I'm missing out Ramadan. But it's like, no. Your command from Allah is commanding you not to fast. Allah is commanding you not to pray. That is your ibadah. You haven't stopped worshiping in Ramadan. No, Allah has taken the ibadah of fasting and praying and replaced it with not fasting and praying. That's your ibadah. So you have to stay with Allah, stay with the ma'bud, stay with the object of your worship, and don't get taken away by the ibadah. Don't let the ibadah distract you, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Jazakumullah khair.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. So yeah, but again, I would say just always look out for those signs. Always look out for those signs, right? Allah's blessings are just everywhere. Allah. Wait, there's a few more questions here. Yeah, books on chivalry. Yes, there are good books. I'll do some digging. Things like Futuwa and so forth. There are some great books. I'll ask my friend Iskandar Ghani because he's good. He has some good books on that. Yeah, parenting as well, right? Always focus on your kids, right? Like just Hamad, just an idea. Like a lot of parents, we make the mistake. We say to our kids, "Don't worry, I'll always be there for you." It's like, no, you won't. Say to your kids, Allah will always be with you. Allah will always be with you. You can't guarantee, you don't know where you're going to be, right? Okay, some ladies put on the hijab in the name of the fashion hijabster. How then can we tell she wears the hijab because of Allah? Yeah, yeah, that's a very good point, right? The hijab should not be like like turned into some fashion item. Right? Guys, like, why are you wearing it? Right? That's true. It's true. There's validity to that. There's validity to that. Because the idea is we don't want it to become like an identity marker, right? Right? Like again, that's kind of like the idea of like wearing a hijab and making it look really fancy and stand out. It's like, well, that I don't know. To me, that's I kind of I would I liken that to these people who pray in like Times Square in New York. They do like Hallelujah prayers in Times Square in New York. It's like, okay. They say, oh, it's Tao. It's like, yeah, but now you're making Islam a spectacle. Like, how are you praying in Times Square when there's all these bright lights and TV screens and people walking everywhere and there's noise? Like, why would you want to pray there, right? Like, don't turn Islam into a spectacle, right? Like, yes, everything comes down to, again, it's your relationship with Allah. You are praying to Allah. You're wearing what you wear for the sake of Allah. If people notice and admire it, great. But don't do it so that people admire you and notice you. Right? It's the same reason. It's the same reason. Like, like you see a lot of like unbelievers. I've seen unbelievers like online complain. They say, "Oh, what? Why can't we come to Mecca? Why can't we come to Mecca? Why can't we see things like?" Because Islam's not a spectacle. We don't need a crowd watching us while we do Umrah. We don't need a crowd watching us while we do Hajj. We're worshiping Allah. We don't do this for show, right? What do you want us to do? Build a giant football stadium around like Mecca and have like a crowd of people watching us? No, that's not what it's about. So we have to be aware of that. So it's one thing to show people Islam, but it's another thing to make Islam a show itself, right? I hope that makes sense. How can we instill Iman, Tawheed in these sisters? Well, you have to talk to them about Allah. I'm sure the Tawheed's there. If they're Muslim, then they have Tawheed. But I mean, we want to you want to talk about Allah. That's again, but that's what this book is about, though, right, Sharif? That's what this book is about. This whole book is about how to instill that iman in Allah, and that's why it's important to read. And that's why I recommend to people to read the other books in this series, right? Because these books, again, these books, as you can see, they're not long, right? They're only like 100 pages. They're not heavily detailed, and they deal with contemporary issues. So again, I would say if you want to read a book for people to build a relationship with Allah, from this series, the Pinnacle Paper series, I'd recommend number two, Inward Sin, number two, because that's all about drawing nearer to Allah. I actually did a lecture on it back when I was in Toronto last month, called Nearness to Allah, or Closest to Allah, based on that book. So I recommend that, Inward Sin, that's Pinnacle Papers Volume 2. And the other one I really recommend, which I think has really benefited a lot of people, I'm judging that by its popularity, is the one on depression and anxiety, right? Depression and anxiety, the cause and treatment according to the Quran. Because that, again, really, really hammers home the importance of building a relationship with Allah and how to build a relationship with Allah. And the key stuff but to summarize Inward Sin, what Imam al-Buti says, like in order to build your relationship with Allah, he narrows it down to like four things. Like there's like four really practical things you can do to build your relationship with Allah. He said number one is to make time every day to contemplate and reflect on Allah. Right? To make time every day to reflect on Allah. So whether that's in the morning after Fajr or Duha time, whether that's at night before you go to bed, whatever it is, you want to have a time where you put everything to the side, right? Put your phone away, put your laptop away, put your stuff away, and just reflect. Just reflect. Just reflect on the creation. Reflect on the ayat that you read. Reflect on the hadith. Reflect on just reflect. Just reflect on Allah. Just contemplate, right? Or think about yourself. Think about What can I do to improve myself as a Muslim? What are some of my bad qualities? What are my good qualities? Good qualities. What are my good qualities? How can I improve? Where can I improve? Like, what are some good qualities that I can take forward and build upon? What are some bad qualities that I think I can leave off? Right? Um, so that's the first thing. You want to take time every day where you just reflect and contemplate, right? However much time you can fit in. But it's important to do it. Number two, have like your morning and evening adhkar. These are really important. Morning and evening adhkar, right? Which again, I'm surprised. I don't know. In the UK, if I was in the UK, I'm surprised at how people don't do these. When I come, there's people who come to me and they say, "Oh, I've got this anxiety. I've got this waswasa. I'm always doubting my wudu. I'm always doubting the validity of my prayer." And it's like, okay, well, do you actually do morning adhkar? Do you do evening adhkar? Really? No, I don't. It's like, okay, you're walking around completely unarmed. You're walking around completely unprotected, right? And you can find it. There's books. We've published a book as well with Nawabooks called Remembrance and Significance of the Prophet, of the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But you also have Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You have like there's websites and apps like islambook.com, which they're all listed there, like 25, 30 adhkar you can make in the morning, evening. That's really important. And then as well some Quran. I'll share a link. I'll share a link on the group, on the Telegram group, called Daily Weird, things that Imam al-Buti recommends. But there's the weird of Imam Nawawi, which is really beautiful. But there's also like one read Yasin, of course, in the Quran every day. Okay, that's number two. Number three, and this is probably like really, really important, maybe more important, is dua. It's really, really important to make dua. So he even suggests it, and he says that after every prayer, after every fard prayer, after you've done your usual adhkar after the daily prayers, the fard prayers, make dua to Allah. Just have a private, intimate conversation with Allah. Talk to Allah. Talk about what you're going through. And don't it's not a list, right? It's not like give me. No, talk to Allah. Tell Allah what you're going through. Say, Allah, I'm finding difficulty in this situation. I think I'm falling short in this situation. I think I need to be improved here. I'm finding it difficult. Help me, Allah. Only you can help me. Only you know where my head lies. Oh, Allah, help me. You are the one. You are Kareem. You're Jawad. You're generous. You're kind. You're merciful. Show me the way. So have that. So he suggests like don't get up from a fard prayer until you've actually done that. Like every day do that. And if you can do that in like the Hajj, even better. If you do like Salatul Hajj, even better. If you do it while you're fasting, even better. But have this conversation with Allah. Have this conversation with Allah. And then the fourth thing he mentioned, which is like a negative command. This is Imam al-Buti. This is Imam al-Buti in the book Inward Sin. Inward Sin. And then the fourth thing was to be careful because the first three are positive. The fourth is negative. Negative meaning avoid the haram. Be careful with the haram. That's the fourth thing he said. Be careful with the haram, like having haram income, haram food, and these kinds of things, right? Because that will affect everything else. But those three things, like ways to build a relationship with Allah, those are key, right? The contemplation, reflection, number one. Number two, morning, evening adhkar and awrad, and then number three, dua. Lots of and like personal, meaningful, intimate conversation with Allah. And Allah knows best. So that's again, that you'll find that in Inward Sin. You'll find it in the book Inward Sin. Anything else? Any other final questions? I don't want to keep people for too long. طيب. Inshallah, I think we'll wrap up. If there are no final questions, we'll wrap up inshallah. I think our next meeting, I think provisionally, because we usually do every month, I think provisionally, we'll aim for Monday, September 1st. Okay, I think that's provisionally. Is that okay for people? Monday, September 1st. I think we'll go for that as like the next meeting. But I need to speak to Ustadh Jalaluddin. He's here able to speak, so we might have to do the 8th week later, but we'll see. We'll confirm it, inshallah. And I'll post those links. I'll post the link on Daily Weird. I'll post it on the group, inshallah. Oh, here inshallah. Oh, yeah. Oh, mashallah. Yes. Nice to meet you, Hamad. Barakallahu feek. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Nice, mashallah. Marhaba, marhaba. Here inshallah. طيب. So, my love, bless you. I'll keep you all safe, inshallah. So the more updates will be posted on the Telegram group. If you need to get in touch with me, firstly, I have a Telegram channel. You get me if you want to find me on Telegram. It's called The Forward, and on Instagram for anything else if you want to ask about questions or the Arabic program or anything like that or books. I'm on Instagram. Nawabooks is on Instagram. If you want to see more details of the books, nawabooks.com, where you can get copies of the books and so forth. And yes, we'll be there to help you, inshallah. But until then, I'll see you September 1st, inshallah. Okay? Walhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. والعاصم إلى لسان بخصوص إلى الذين آمنوا بصالحات يتواصل وتواصل بالصبر. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Again, there's no final question before I dip out. Everything's fine? Khair inshallah. Khair inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Shukran jazeelan everyone again for your participation and your attendance and for your really great questions. Thank you so much for your great questions. May Allah bless you all inshallah. Barakallahu feek. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.